The Hawaiian religion originated from migrant Tahitians and other Pacific Islanders who arrived in the Hawaiian Islands between 500 and 1300 AD. The staggered arrival of these groups resulted in several waves of development within the religion, as new practices were introduced from the home islands. Early Hawaiian religion was largely animistic, focusing on deities that embodied and personified the natural forces of the world. It is difficult to determine exactly which religious beliefs appeared when, however, though it is known that the emphasis on ancestors as well as certain specific gods arrived later. Of the Akua, the natural gods, there are four prominent deities of the Hawaiian Islands: Kane, Lono, Ku, and Kanaloa. Kane was the creator god and embodied sunlight, the sky, and procreation. In the majority of creation stories, before Kane there was nothing but Po, endless darkness and chaos, the night. Kane awoke and recognized himself as separate from Po, and pulled himself free from the darkness. The other Akua sensed Kane's presence, and also pulled themselves free. Kane then created light to push back Po. Lono is the god of fertility, music, rainfall, and agriculture. When Kane created the universe, Lono brought sound and motion. After, Ku, the god of war, often depicted with a very shark-like aspect, brought substance to the universe. They then created all the lesser gods that followed, including of particular note Kanaloa, a counterpoint of Ku and the god of sea and the waters. The original three then created the lesser spirits, the earth for which they to reside upon, and finally man, created in the image of Kane. Worship of these primary gods was done in a variety of ways. Temples, known as heiaus, were often created, and people worshipped them originally in simple terms. Often the gods were worshipped in particular aspects of themselves. For example, Ku was sometimes worshipped as Ku Ka Ilimoku, the Caesar of Islands, in order for the worship to gain Ku's favor in their martial campaigns. While the Akua are the primary gods of the Hawaiian religion, that doesn't mean that the lesser gods, ancestral spirits, and other deities were unimportant by any means. Many of them were worshipped and prayed to quite regularly in various aspects, particularly as they were often more directly involved in day-to-day life on the Hawaiian Islands. Of particular note, of course, is Pele, the goddess of fire, lightning, wind, and volcanoes, who is involved in many stories throughout the Hawaiian mythos, and has an emphasized importance on the main island of Hawaii. It's because she's the fucking volcano goddess. There's a lot of volcanoes. Figure it out. Traditional Polynesian culture and religion takes particular emphasis on castes and duties associated with those castes, and Hawaii is no exception. Duties, rights, politics, religious practices, political policy, and laws were governed based on class and gender through a code of conduct known as kapu, essentially taboo. However, for much of the early occupation of the Isles by the Hawaiians, these kapu were not inordinately numerous or strict, with the ceremonies to correct infractions minor and relatively simple. Sometime around 1200 AD, a Tahitian priest known as Pao arrived in the Hawaiian Islands. Offended by the lack of respect the alii social class, the royalty, commanded, he brought complete revolution to the Hawaiian religion, and kapu became highly strict restrictions on daily life. Men and women had to eat separately. Food had to be gathered and prepared in very specific ways. Women could not eat pork, most types of bananas, coconuts, or taro. Women were also forbidden to eat many large types of fish. Women were also generally exiled from the community during their menses. Pao also instituted a new emphasis on the Li social class, the royal highborns descended by blood directly from the gods, and possessing great spiritual power, purportedly. Kapu prevented a person from entering an area a chief or other figure with great spiritual power resided, as even something as minuscule as a lock of their hair or a single fingernail contained a portion of their spiritual power. Looking at a royal, standing taller than them, when in sight of them, wearing red and yellow feathers, stepping in a chief's shadow, and entering other restricted holy sites was strictly kapu. The price of violating these new, harsher kapus was always death. Pao introduced human sacrifice to the Hawaiian Islands, which began vicious periods of bloody sacrifice of defeated foes, those that violated kapu, and captured slaves. If a kapu was committed, your only hope was to flee to a place of refuge wherein your arrival would essentially deem you safe until a kahuna performed the ceremonies necessary to purify you and free you of your kapu, when you could then return to your home safely. In this way, it was possible for losers in war to be completely purified of their loss and avoid sacrifice, so long as they reached a place of refuge without being intercepted by body catcher kahunas who procured more sacrifices for the gods, or any other person who wanted to sacrifice you for religious gain. One heiau of particular note on the Hawaiian Islands is Mo'okini Heiau. Mo'okini was built under the command of Pao himself to worship his preferred aspect of the war god Ku. And worshipped he was. Tens of thousands of people were executed to glorify Ku and gain his favor in war. I actually visited Mo'okini Heiau. It's located miles and miles in the middle of nowhere on roughly the edge of a cliff where the plain of one of the major mountains meets the sea. And the atmosphere there was admittedly very eerie. I'm not really a superstitious type of person, but it definitely felt kind of creepy. The wind was quite strong to the point that there were several large wind turbines harnessing the wind in the area. But you could definitely see why Pao chose this place for his sacrifices. The heiau was quite daunting, and well met the atmosphere surrounding it. Though perhaps that was the other way around. I don't know. Other than the wind and the sound of the sea, it was utterly quiet. And the heiau itself was very massive and empty. It's constructed entirely out of lava rock and was supposedly built in one night. A chain of 10,000 men and women carrying rocks from a valley 15 miles distant. Within its outer walls resides two rocks standing alone from the heiau itself. Here, as centuries ago, resides the place where people were killed, their bodies were stripped of their flesh, and their bones were removed to be carved into tools and fishhooks. Upon this depression here has flowed the blood of countless thousands. Their lives were given to Ku, and their flesh was fed to the sharks in the sea below. The strict kapu system was ended in the early 1800s. Kamehameha I had conquered the entirety of Hawaii, self-attributed much through his devotion to the religion and its sacrificial practices, as well as strict observance of kapu. After his death, many of the kapu were seized by his son, Kamehameha II, particularly through the influence of his mother and the other wives of Kamehameha I. Through their free eating, the Ainoa, the Kapu, the kapu on the sharing of food between genders, and the general gender restriction practices based on food taboos, were ended. Over time, the Hawaiian religion has greatly waned, as much of its followers have converted to Christianity. Some do persist, and many hybridize their traditional ways with the more recently imported religions. In particular, faith in Pele, the volcano goddess, has endured especially due to her overt presence in Hawaii's awesome volcanoes. In essence, nobody wants to risk pissing off Pele. That would be bad. That would be really bad. P.S. The Hawaiian Islands are cool. Don't bother going to any of the smaller ones. Go to Big Hawaii. That's the one with all the cool volcanoes and natural stuff and all the old historical monuments on it. Just go there. The other ones are tourist traps, just endless beaches that aren't very good. And that's it for this update. See you next time.